Before Puppeteers for Fears, I wore a suit and worked on Wall Street. I sold insurance. No. Can you imagine that?
Follow that train.
Follow that car.
We have no idea where we are. We're off on the road to somewhere.
Where we're going, we're not really sure. The destination means less than the journey.
That's what it says in cheap hotel brochures.
That's for sure.
This is a true story. I actually like to just, in the middle of conversations, add the words "the musical" to things to see how people react. So you'd be like, I need to go get a big gulp. The musical. You look at people in the eye like that and you see how they react. The reason we did Cthulhu the Musical was not because I had a deep and profound love for H.P. Lovecraft, but because I was outside in a public park and I said, Cthulhu the Musical, and then someone turned to me and said, where can I see that? And I said, you can see it here in fall. And then they walked away, and then my girlfriend turned to me and said, well, you've done it now. Now you have to write it. And I was like, I know.
If you express interest in anything that Josh says, he will have to make a musical about it or he will die, is the thesis.
I'm Cthulhu, bitch, make a magnum prick. You're about to hear my gag go click, click, click. Born in the stars, but I live in the sea. Not even Poseidon can battle me.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
No. Yeah, this is where the magic happens. It's not really set up at the moment, just because we've been on hiatus for so long because of COVID, but normally what we do is we'd have the puppet house set up over here. We'd have the band sort of in this wall, and then the puppets hang back there, and then this is usually a tech setup. But when we're actually doing rehearsals, we have sometimes up to 15 people working in this space, and then every so often we'll bring in an audience of a couple people just to, bounce the idea off, see if they laugh. What's cool about, I think, some of what we've done is when we perform, a lot of the audience will say, like, finally, anything different. I don't even know where this came from, but it's the mixtape box puppet. I don't even think we made it. I think it just arrived here. It happens actually a lot. Like, what are you gonna do? Even give them goodwill? Here, have a box of puppets. They're like, no thanks. I'm never gonna go like, I need to make a puppet with gigantic double E breasts. But once you have it, you're like, well, we might as well figure out something to do with it.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't own my body. You don't own my time. The only thing I owe to you is this middle finger of mine.
Puppeteers for Fears is a hybrid comedy and a music troupe that performs horror and science fiction rock and roll musicals with puppets. If you couldn't tell by that, it is also a mouthful.
Josh is sort of a fire hose of creative content and ideas. He's very enthusiastic. That can be colossally overwhelming at times. So that's something that you kind of have to work with when you're a creative collaborator with Josh.
Mostly I'd write funny songs about farts.
2 hands are better than 1, but we also have 2 butts.
I grew up playing in punk rock bands. When I went to college, I started studying playwriting. When I was living in Boise, a friend of mine ran a theater company there, and she told me they were going to do a Halloween puppet show, and she wanted me to write something for it. And at first I was like, puppets? That sounds lame. And then suddenly it hit me. I was like, oh, puppet horror musical. Yes, that's weird enough to get past all of these things. So I reached out to like all of my friends, and I was like, what is the worst, most inappropriate idea for a musical? Because I figured, let's just shoot the moon with this thing. The sort of informal, unscientific poll that I took came back with serial killers as being the most inappropriate topic for a musical. So I was like, great.
I bet you're wondering what I'm doing standing outside that pretty lady's window so late at night, huh? Well, you see, I'm a serial killer.
I moved back home to Ashland, where I grew up. And Ashland's a big theater town because of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. There's a lot of actors around. And we kind of tentatively started this thing. It was like, sort of like starting like a garage band or something where you're just sort of like, well, I got a friend who plays the bass, and I got a friend who plays the drums, and I know a guy with PA, my mom let us play in her garage.
I have this background in general creative arts, that's sort of a hodgepodge of video production, graphic design. So he sort of enlisted me to just help him make this a reality. We got together to put this show on. I came up with the title Puppeteers for Fears for the group and for this show, which we all thought was a fun little pun.
We show up to do the show, and there's like a line out the door and like down the block, and people are just cramming in, and we're suddenly like, oh shit. 2015, we did the Halloween show that was just called Puppeteers for Fears, and then in the spring of 2016, we launched our first feature-length show. The actors would ask me what to do, and I'd just go, that sounds great. Because I didn't want anyone to quit. Because it was like a stiff breeze, not even a stiff breeze, a light breeze, a heavy sneeze could have blown us over at that point.
It was so well received that we just decided to keep going with it and see how far we could take it. And 5 years later, we were still doing it.
I don't think there's anything else like it. It's kind of one of the most bizarre things you could put in puppetry, just with all this crazy foul language and violence and sci-fi horror. That's not something you usually see with puppets, and especially with like cute little Muppet style hand and rod puppets.
And granted, you know, if you're into puppets, there's not a ton of available options for you. You know, it's kind of like the Muppets and then like maybe something else random every so often. So, you know, but I think a lot of folks, for them, it really triggered that nostalgia. They were like, they liked this thing a lot when they were a kid, and then they grew up and they still really liked that art form, but they wanted story material that had aged with them.
I'm gonna rip his throat out like he ripped my heart out. That ought to make us square. So Tad, you better beware. There's hair down there.
Once upon a time, these were all stowed neatly. You give up. Starts to feel like an episode of Hoarders at a certain point. This is Grop the Sasquatch. He is a never nude. He's very lonely.
When the ground it is so brittle, Godzilla has got nothing on these toes.
Blork Jr. has come from the Horsehead Nebula on an abducting mission with his dad. He didn't really want to come along. He wanted to stay home and play video games, but his dad drug him along because he's trying to teach him the family business of abducting and anal probing.
We abduct Hicks, probe them in the medical bay, then flip their cows inside out as a distraction. Check. Can I go to the airlock now, please?
You put anything on a stick and it becomes a puppet. This was a sentient gun. These are fun. You just, you know, got a ton of these. The cows were really great because, you know, they were plotting a revolution because they were angry. And they were trying to get everyone to go vegan, and it was like angry. The song was called Mad Cow, and it was like, I'm a mad cow. I'm a bad cow.
I'm a mad cow, a bad cow. Look at me wrong and I'll put you right down.
Well, I'm a sad cow, a grad cow. I've used my smarts to avoid a showdown.
The fact that we wrote, rehearsed, and staged a full feature-length musical in 6 weeks, including recording the original soundtrack, while all working jobs and doing other things. That's insane. No one does that. We did it several times a year, but it was worth every second of sleep that I lost.
One step ahead of flying by the seat of our pants, you know, just sort of figuring things out as we go along and encountering new challenges. But I think that's also part of what makes it so special and so fun.
It's kind of an organized chaos. We're all climbing over each other. There's this like weird choreography that we learned as we went. There's just a lot of sweat. There's a lot of pain. Oh my God, your arms just hanging them up all show for like 2 hours is so painful.
Puppeteering is an incredibly physical thing. I mean, and people who don't think it's not that big a deal, I say, okay, well, tell you what, hold a 3-pound weight above your head for 45 minutes and try to sing and dance while you do it.
I lost my house, I lost my wife, I very nearly lost my life, chasing down this crazy dream.
This is true. One of the songs, it's called In the Butt. It's a song about anal probing. It was written by walking down the street with my girlfriend and just shouting at her, in the butt, in the what, in the rear, down here, and where this one, I'm sure I heard you clear. And so we'd be walking down the sidewalk in our hometown, and I'd be, and I think I thought that was really funny, and I don't know that she felt the same way.
Because it really was him just like dancing around, singing like in the butt, in the what, and we're like walking along the creek in downtown Ashland, and he's like full like Fred Astaire, just like jazz handsing at me, singing about anal probes, very loudly in my face, and that's just kind of life.
But anyway, my writing process is to shout at women on the street, is what I'm getting at.
In the butt.
In the what?
In the rear.
Down here, just wanted to be sure that I heard you clear.
In the ass.
Oh, gas.
In the tail.
Exhale.
Roast rump.
We call it Donald Trump.
What we've sort of found is that people really get on board with the weirdness of it. Like, they like that we're weird, they like that we're doing something truly weird, and it's almost like the weirder we are, the more we get away with, and the more people applaud us for it.
Puppets serve like a perceptual filter. You don't see it in quite the same way. It's like it sort of like goes, oh, okay, I don't take it quite literally, but then I can get the idea across. So it allows you to do stuff that you wouldn't be able to do with human actors.
I'll get out.
Have it your way, Shove. Good luck with the werewolves. Vroom, vroom, bitch.
Wait.
We did this show called Cattle Mutilation the Musical. We really wanted to do something hyper-local, and so the joke was, well, what's something that people locally would think is a documentary? Oh, Bigfoot. So it was like Bigfoot and UFOs because we wanted it to really be that Southern Oregon vibe. It's like, yeah, you know what, I see myself reflected in this weird rock and roll puppet show as much as you can, I suppose.
The last night of the tour in Reading, this man came up to Josh sort of in tears and was just like, thank you. Like, I've been trying to figure out how to relate to my son, and hugged him and was very, very deeply moved, and it was this very, very bizarre thing. But I think that's one of the surprising things about the shows is they're very silly. There's always like a very real thematic weight to them, though. There's a lot of family stories that address father-son issues. It's really interesting to see people come in for the sort of puppet gags and leave with this real sense of like, oh wow, that story got to me.
A lot of them end with people learning how to live together with one another because they're sort of on the opposite side of, you know, the same conflict, sort of seeing things from two different directions.
And son, I know you're probably not gonna fall into my footsteps anytime soon by coming out here looking for Bigfoot. So it may be a while before we see each other again. So while we're here in this tender moment, I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you for saving us.
When COVID hit, we were in the middle of planning our spring show for 2020, and it was supposed to be this sort of variety show where we were breaking the form a little bit of what we had previously been doing for a few years. And we were sort of in this process of evolving, and that was interrupted.
What's interesting is that since Aubrey and I neither of us are puppeteers, we were, you know, sort of just behind the scenes running the thing. We weren't really able to pivot to video. It just kind of collapsed in on itself, and I don't exactly know what the future is. We've been trying to transition it to a television show, you know, using some of our existing IP, but so far that has not panned out. So I don't know exactly what the future is.
I can tell you it was really, really tragic to have to give up touring. We had to sell off our tour van early in the year in 2020, and I had said to Josh it was like selling the house that our kids grew up in. It just felt like this very meaningful thing that we had to let go of that just had become such a huge, huge part of our lives for 5 years. I don't know that it's something that we're ready to move on from yet, but we don't really know what the state of it is now. You know, I hope something comes out of it that we can continue to create maybe some new multimedia art, whether it's Puppeteers for Fears or whether it's something else sort of adjacent to that creatively, but we don't really know. We'll sort of see what the future holds.
Actually, I'm not dead yet.
Damn, I better reload then.
Yes, reload.
Reloading.
Yes.
I still have time for one more song.
Damn!
Music.
It was just this unbelievable intersection of different disciplines and different personalities that was something really magical that like everyone involved with was just bursting at the seams with like pride and love and affection for. The fact that it happened at all, let alone that it went on as long as it did and did as many things that it did, is a goddamn miracle.
You wrap up any loose ends in the plot while you're at it.
All right, I'll try.
Make it sexy.
That's a lot for one song, Chip.
You got this.
Fine.
Now the war is over, but at what cost? We may have won, but look how much we've lost. Well, city's gone, and family shattered, and no one knows what comes after. 'Cause we committed our son to the world.
It just, you know, ends with a lot of blood and lesbian sex and, you know, basic stuff for kids.